Our times are in His hands. Our lives, everything that happens to us is in His hands. And that is what we should anchor upon, is that God is sovereign. When things happen, when things are beyond our control, when we go through trials and suffering and sickness, when things happen, our lives are in the hands of a loving and faithful God who does not do evil. He's not one that does evil to us. He's not an evil God. And so we can trust Him. And that God is a great and good God. And when we lie our heads down on the pillows at night, we can rest on Him and His promises and His sovereignty. And that is how He's in control. And that is how we should handle life. Because 2 weeks ago I had asked, how do you handle life because life is hard? Well, this is how we should handle life, is trusting the Lord. I'm going to turn to Psalm 31. Psalm 31 as I read all 24 verses. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness deliver me. Incline your ear to me, rescue me quickly. Be to me a rock of strength, a stronghold to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake you will lead me and guide me. You will pull me out of the net which they have secretly laid for me. For you are my strength. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have ransomed me, O Lord, God of truth. But I trust the Lord. I hate those who regard vain idols. But I trust the Lord. I will rejoice and be glad in your loving kindness, because you have seen my affliction. You have known the troubles of my soul, and you have not given me over to the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a large place. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted away with grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength has failed me because of my iniquity, and my body is wasted away. Because of all my adversaries, I become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. I am forgotten as a dead man out of mind. I am like a broken vessel. For I have heard the slander of many. Terror is on every side. While they took counsel together against me, they schemed to take away my life. But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. Make your face shine upon your servant. Save me in your loving kindness. Let me not be put to shame, O Lord, for I call upon you. Let the wickedness be put to shame. Let them be silent in Sheol. Let the lying lips be mute, which speak arrogantly against the righteous with pride and contempt. How great is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, which you have wrought for those who take refuge in you. Before the sons of men, you hide them in the secret place of your presence from me. You hide them in the secret place of your presence from the conspiracies of man. You keep them secretly in a shelter from the strife of tongues. Blessed be the Lord, for he has made marvelous his loving kindness to me in a besieged city. As for me, I said, my alarm, I am cut off from before your eyes. Nevertheless, you have heard the voice of my supplication when I cried to you. O love the Lord, all you his godly ones. The Lord preserves the faithful and fully recompenses the proud doer. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who hope in the Lord. So when we handle life, knowing that the Lord is in his hands, we can go, our lives, I should say, are in his hands. We can go to the Lord for help. We can pray to God's help. That's what we saw 2 weeks ago. That in verse 1 we see that he says, in you I have taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness deliver me. O my God, in you I trust. Do not let me ashamed. Do not let my enemies exult over me. Twice he says about being ashamed that it's not being embarrassed. It's that all your hope was in the Lord, and you come to being disappointed because it proved to be false. But he knows that's not going to happen. He knows that he's taken refuge in the Lord, and he won't be disappointed. And so we can go to the Lord for help. We can go for his help there. And then secondly as well, that we put our trust in God. You're my rock and my fortress, verse 3. You know, he speaks of your name's sake, you'll lead and guide me. In those verses, he talks about putting his trust in the Lord. There are those who put their trust in idols, but those idols are what is going to be, the people are going to be bankrupt. They're going, on that day, on the day of judgment, they're going to see that they were wrong. They put their hope in false things. But when you put your trust in the Lord, it's not a false hope. And so we ought to rejoice and be glad. Let God know the troubles of our soul and trust him. And then now this morning, tell the Lord your distress. It's found in verses 9 to 13. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted away from my grief, my soul and my body also. That is a very familiar phrase. What I mean is, be gracious to me, O Lord. One that we have encountered quite often in the first 31 Psalms. This should be a familiar phrase as well to you from when you read the Psalms. David uses it quite often, be gracious to me. This phrase was just used in Psalm 30. Verse 10, hear, O Lord, and be gracious to me, O Lord, be my helper. In fact, be gracious to me is used 23 times in the Psalms. David is desiring God's mercy. He's desiring God's favor because he's in distress. He describes his distress as his eye, his soul, his body. All of them are being wasted away as from grief, is the way he describes it. He's growing weak from this trial, whatever it may be, that's causing him distress. Look at verse 10 of Psalm 31. For my life is spent with sorrow, my years with sighing. My strength has failed because of my iniquity, and my body is wasted away. Again, now he talks about his life, his years, my strength, my body, that they're being consumed, wasted away, weakened with sorrow. He feels that his life is consumed with that. He feels that his years have been full of sorrow. He feels his strength has failed. His body is weak. He's describing that he is drained physically, emotionally, mentally. Is there ever a time in your life that you felt that way? Could be from a trial. It could be from getting sick. Could be that you felt that way from the death of someone that you loved, a family member, a friend. Then you know what David is describing when you're mentally drained, physically drained, emotionally drained. And David attributes this to sin. When he says, because of my iniquity. It's hard to know whether he's describing some personal sin that he has committed, or the biblical truth that we are sinners and have a sin nature. Because we know the truth of Romans 3:23 that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And that's the biblical truth, that we are all born sinners, and the reason many things can happen is because of just the effects of the curse of sin. It's not just personal sin that things happen and affect us, but just the effects of sin in this world. I mean, there are times in the Psalms that he does confess sin. In Psalm 30, he had grown self-reliant, he had gone proud. And he confesses that in verse 6 of Psalm 30. Now as for me, I said in my prosperity, I will never be moved. We have Psalm 51, which is another situation where he confesses his sexual immorality with Bathsheba and murder of Uriah. Psalm 51:1, for the choir director, a psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet came to him after he had gone into Bathsheba. Be gracious to me, O God, according to your loving kindness, according to the greatness of your compassion, blot out my transgressions. And so it's hard to know what David is talking about because there is nothing else he says beyond because of my sin. And so is this because of the effects of sin, the curse of sin, or is this because of a personal sin? But either way, it still doesn't change that he's in distress and that he can go to God. Because we've seen the Psalms where he had been done nothing wrong and he had problems and he went to, and that would be effect of the curse of sin because of people, where he goes to the Lord. Then we have the Psalms where he has confessed personal sin and gone to the Lord and the Lord has helped him in both situations. And so I'm thankful that we can go to the Lord as well, that whether it's because of the effects of sin from this world or because of our personal sin, we can still go to the Lord in our distress. And we can tell him about it because he cares. He's not one that's going to tell us that you made your bed, now go lie in it. That when we come to him humbly and turn from our sin, he forgives and he will help. And so David is a man of sorrows. But there's another one who is described in the Bible as a man of sorrows, acquainted with the grief. But he is one who never sinned. He never had an innate sin nature. And that is who I'm describing. That man is Jesus Christ, who is truly God and truly man, who suffered on the cross and died for your sin, your iniquity. Isaiah 53:3. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hid their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. And because of what Christ has done, we can find that mercy in time of need. He's a faithful high priest, Hebrews 4:15-16. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Therefore let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Because of him, you find forgiveness. When you sin against the Lord each and every day, you can confess that and forsake that. When troubles and trials come because of others, you can go and find grace and mercy because of our high priest. What a faithful high priest we have. Look with me at verse 11. Because of all my adversaries I have become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. Whatever his enemies have done to him, whatever they said about him, has caused trouble. David has become a reproach, as he describes, especially to his neighbors. That word for reproach describes a cutting taunt, a sharp criticism. I mean, think about Job and how his friends treated him when they came to comfort him. And that's the irony there. They came to comfort him. When he went through the loss of his children, when he lost his wealth, and then his health was affected, where they didn't even, whatever he had, they could not recognize him. He had boils, we know of. Some thought he may have gotten, I've heard some commentators describe that he may have gotten what's called elephant's disease, that where there's disfiguring. There's some have get that today. But here, the treatment he received, they accused him of sin, of being, in fact, a great sinner. They could not see that there are times when godly people suffer. They had the same mindset as the disciples did when they asked who about the man born blind. Who sinned? Was it his parents or him that he was born blind? We know it would not be, and Jesus said it was neither. It wasn't because of somehow he's being punished because of sin he has yet to commit or the sins of his parents. Sometimes godly people suffer. And Job was one of those that suffered. But they could only see that they had the mindset that the righteous will always be blessed and never suffer, and the wicked, they will suffer. That's how things should go. But that's not how it always goes. Alan Ross explains that this word means that what happened to David is that he receives no sympathy or understanding, just criticism and accusation. That's all he got, was just criticism and accusation. To his acquaintances, his friends who has known him, he becomes an object of dread. This means that those who known him, he's someone to be feared, someone to be avoided. And that's causing him distress. I mean, have you ever been forsaken by just one person that's turned their back on you, even when you needed them the most? David has many. And you look at verse 12. This is how they're treating him. I'm forgotten as a dead man, out of mind. I am like a broken vessel. David feels like he's being treated as if he died. That they've forgotten about him. That they put him out of their mind. They're not going to think about him. They're done with him. He's dead to them. Not as if he's dead to them and they're mourning his death because they loved him. No, it's just that not going to think about him. He also feels like he's a broken vessel, no longer used for his purpose. That, like when you break a plate or a cup. I mean, think about that. Have you ever broken a plate or a cup? And I would have to say most of us ever done one or the other, or broken something. Its purpose is no longer useful. We can't use it anymore. That's how David feels. Like a broken vessel. Just something to be scrapped away. Like a car that got into an accident and is no longer useful. All smashed up. That's how he feels. And though he feels that his friends or those around him do not care about him, there is one who has not forsaken him. There's one who is not, that he's not dead to. Not one, and who he's not like a broken vessel. That is God. God who has promised He'd never leave us nor forsake us, nor desert us. Hebrews 13:5. And it's really a quote from Deuteronomy. For He Himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you. And thank the Lord that though friends and family and people may forsake you, the Lord will never. You can go to Him whenever. He will not leave you when you're suffering. He will not leave you when you have trials. He's not one that you can never tell your problems to. He's one that you can tell your problems to. You can tell Him you're suffering. You can ask Him for His help. Because He'll never leave you nor forsake you. Look at verse 13. For I have heard the slander of many, terrors on every side. While they took counsel together against me, they schemed to take away my life. David hears their whispers. They're lying about him. They're slandering him. They're scheming against him. They're seeking to kill him. There's terror all around on every side. And only the Lord can help him. That's who he's putting his trust in Him. That's who he's putting his trust in the Lord. Though his friends, though his family, though people have forsaken him and turned their back on him, who's dead, he's dead to, he goes to the Lord and tells the Lord his distress. Tells the Lord what is happening. And then he puts his trust in him. He declares that in verses 14 through 18. But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. Even though there's danger from his enemies, terror on every side, he describes there. He's being attacked from all sides. Even though his friends have forsaken him, David is still relying on the Lord. This trial, this suffering, has not caused David to give up and stop trusting the Lord. His trust is in God and God alone. Your faith in God, your trust in God, is not destroyed by trials. For a genuine believer, it's not destroyed, but it's only strengthened. It's refined. That's really the whole point of what Job went through. Satan had accused Job of only serving God because God had blessed him and made him rich. And we know in one day, there came a great wind, blew the house down on him, and it was all his children. There came robbers and marauders that came and took away all his livestock. That is what your wealth back then was in. And killed all his servants, except for the one who escaped. But Job trusted in the Lord. He said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And then, when that didn't work, there come another day when Satan accused Job that if God had struck him with it and he lost his health, then Job would lose his faith. That Job would curse you to your face, is what Satan has said. But you know what? Satan is not omniscient. Satan can't even see the future. Satan's may be smarter than every one of us. But even his knowledge is limited because he's a created being. He thought this, but he was wrong. He was wrong when he told God, however, put forth your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, he will curse you to your face. But Job's faith in God was not extinguished. Even when Job was discouraged, when he was depressed, he actually cursed the day of his birth. He still talked about that his hope was in his Redeemer. He still had his hope in the Lord. And so he didn't lose his trust and faith in God. David did not lose his faith and trust in God through these trials. It refined it. It strengthened it because his prayers were strengthened because of it. And you'll find that your prayers are strengthened. And your trust is strengthened. And whenever you hear someone say they're no longer believe in God, they went through this trial, or maybe it's because that here now they accept something the culture does and say that they don't believe the Bible. Understand that they were never saved to begin with. 1 John 2:19, they went out from us, but they were not really of us. For if they had been of us, they would have remained with us. But they went out so it would be shown that they are not all of us. A genuine believer's trust and faith in God is strengthened, it's refined, it's purified, become more like Christ through trials. And David's trust in God brings him comfort. That's what we find in these verses. And your trust in God should bring you comfort. Expressing comfort just like David does in verse 15. My time's in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. My times are in your hand. David is describing the years that he lives, but it doesn't just stop at the length of his life. It also means that whatever happens in his life is under the hand of a loving, sovereign God who is faithful. All in God's will. And he takes comfort in that. He takes comfort that whatever happens in my life, God is in control. It's under the hand of a gracious, merciful, loving God. Even though this trial is causing me stress and painful, even though I'm mentally fatigued, physically fatigued, emotionally fatigued, he takes comfort. And you can take comfort even when you feel like that. Or even when you don't. You take comfort in God's hand. Romans 8:28 through 29, and we know that God causes all things together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his Son, so that he would be the firstborn among many brethren. This is why David asked the Lord to deliver him from his enemies. It's because God is working all things together for good. David trusts the Lord. His faith is strengthened by his trust. And you can as well, as when you take your distress, your troubles, your sorrows, the things that are happening in your life to the Lord. Trust him and strengthen. Be strengthened. His prayers are also strengthened as he trusts the Lord. And you'll find yours too. And that's what you can learn. When troubles come, pray. When troubles come, pray earnestly. When troubles come, pray and do not give up. But commit your life to the Lord and trust him that his will be done. That he knows what is best, and that your life, whatever happens in this life, however long you live and whatever happens, is under the hand of a faithful, loving God. And then look at verse 16 with me. Make your face to shine upon your servant. Save me in your loving kindness. Make your face shine. He wants God's blessing. He wants God's favor again. Meaning this trial to end. The truth to come out about what his enemies are saying. That his friends would come back. This make your face shine comes right from a blessing that the priests were to give. Numbers 6:23 through 27. Speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, Thus you shall bless the sons of Israel. You shall say to them, The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. So they shall invoke my name on the sons of Israel, and I then will bless them. That is what David is thinking about. That is what David is alluding. The Lord bless me. Cause your face to shine upon me. Cause this trial to end. Save me in your loving kindness. That rescue me from this trial because of who you are. That's that Hebrew word hesed that speaks of God's faithfulness, his mercy, his love. That's why that the King James will translate this word quite a few different ways, because one word cannot encapture the whole meaning of this word. And that's why you have loving kindness as well, because of the kindness and love of the Lord here in the New American Standard. But God's faithfulness and who he is, what he has promised to his people. So David wants God's blessing. He wants this to end. And then look at verse 17. He says again, Let me not be put to shame, O Lord, for I will call upon you. I call upon you. Let the wicked be put to shame. Let them be silent in Sheol. Let me not be ashamed, put to shame. That word shame, speaking of one who has put all their hope and trust in the Lord. Or really it describes when you put your trust in something that you thought would come to be, and then in the end you're disappointed. Come to destruction. But David knows that that's not going to happen to him. It's actually because he wants the people to see that those who put their trust in the Lord, they're the ones that are better off. because of who God is. The wicked who put their trust in other things, whether it's wealth, false gods, or thinking they can worship false gods and God at the same time, and put their hope in anything else, that they think that that's going to save them, they're going to be put to shame. I think of the world even right now. They mock Christians that saying there's nothing after death. There are some scientists who are arrogant and so proud that they think they can declare what happens after death. That's an arrogant and proud statement. You have to be omniscient to be able to make a statement like that. And they are not. The only one is God. And they're the ones that are put to shame. They will find in the end when they die. And sadly when they die. When they go to the grave and then when they go to hell, that what they hoped in, whether it be science, whether it is wealth, whether it is, oh, nothing happens, it's just the end. They will come to a ruin. Just like Jesus described, as the kids will sing a song based on the parable that Jesus talked about, the wise man who builds his house upon the rock and the foolish man builds his house upon the sand. And I remember that even song as a kid, that you had make this loud noise with your hands to make it that crash. As great as the fall will be. But those who put their trust in the Lord will not be disappointed. We will not be disappointed. We will not be put to shame. The world would like us to be, but they won't. It won't. And then verse 18, let the lying lips be mute, which speak arrogantly against the righteous with pride and contempt. Let them be stopped. Stop them, Lord, from doing this. And we can ask that, Lord, to do that even in our lives. That, Lord, let their lies be stopped. Let the truth come out, Lord. They're arrogant. They speak with pride and contempt. They're speaking against your people. And they're lying. Let them be stopped. Because when you are slandered or lied about, I'm sure that you pray the same thing. The Lord, let the truth come out. Let that lie die. Let it die. Let no one believe that. That's certainly what David is praying about. The truth would come out, that they'd be stopped, that people would see the truth, see through their lies, see through their schemes, and not believe them, that it would be turned around upon them, that they would be stopped. And so when life is hard, we can tell God our distress. We can go to Him and pray. We can tell Him about all that's happened. And He cares. And we can tell Him repeatedly. Friends can get tired of hearing the same thing. But you know what? The Lord never does. And He is one that even at 3 o'clock in the morning you could pray to. Midnight, any hour of the day, when you can call upon Him and pray. And tell Him your distress. And we put our trust in Him because our times are in His hands. Your time, your life is in His hand. You trust Him. And there is even a hymn that I came across that is based upon this psalm. It's called My Times Are in Thy Hand. It was written by a man by the name of W.F. Lloyd, who lived in the 1800s. My times are in your hand is the first verse. My God, I wish them there. My life, my friends, my soul, I leave entirely to your care. The second verse, my times are in your hand, whatever they may be, pleasing or painful, dark or bright, as you know best for me. The third, my times are in your hand, why should I doubt or fear? My Father's hand will never cause His child a needless tear. Number 4, my times are in your hand, Jesus the crucified. Those hands my cruel sins had pierced are now my guard and guide. And then the last one, the fifth one. My times are in your hand, such faith you give to me, that after death at your right hand I shall forever be. How many has ever heard that hymn before? I wish I could find music to that so we can sing that. I think it's a great hymn that sums up this psalm, because our times are in their hand, and we don't need to doubt or fear, as the song says. Whatever they may be, pleasing or painful, dark or bright, God knows best for me. He knows best for you. So our times are in His hands. And one day we'll be with Him forever. And so we can trust Him. However long we live, whatever happens, good or bad, suffering or blessings, we trust Him and we commit our lives to the Lord because He cares and He loves us greatly. And so we ought to trust Him.